like a tie, but I can't pick a tie. It has to be just one.
I mean,
if you want some help on that one, since we stuck together for life here, if you choose one that I would also choose, and vice versa, so you can keep them both.
Collectively, yes, that would be accurate.
I'm gonna say, and hopefully my twins' Wi-Fi is on. My probably biggest fandom is I'm gonna say anime and manga and that whole thing. You know, I have the Crunchyroll thing. It's just a thing. I like engaging in that. I like talking about it. I like being about it, and that's my thing.
And is that including but not limited to any and all influences and inspirations and everything else?
110%. If there is a 7 degrees of separation, it's probably in my fandom.
That's fair. I know y'all simpatico. It's adorable. All right. Well, I'll have the since the twin number one went. I'll have twin Demarius go next.
Well, hey everyone, my name is Demarius. Long A's and Latin pronunciations.
Okay, Demarius. Yes. Duly noted. Duly noted.
Appreciate it. Yes, exactly, Marcus. Wonder Twin powers activate.
Wow.
So like I said, everyone, my name is Demarius Newsome. For those of you engaged with me on social media, I have a plethora of interests and a lot of things that I talk about and discuss. But I'd say my number one passion, especially as I'm growing in different things that I'm doing, is a lot of social justice, social engagement, mainly just in the questioning and the approaching of the different systems and institutions that we have, whether it's from a government perspective, a legal perspective, as I am an attorney, whether it's from a church perspective, as I'm an active member in my church, as well as I'm also a deacon in a wide variety of other ministries and everything else, and really just taking a look at the systems that we have, seeing where they work and improving them, and then bringing attention to where they are not working to then try to force that change the best that I can, whatever I can do, even if it's a matter of just engaging the proper conversations to be able to move things forward. As it goes for my number one fandom, the reason why I asked my twin the follow-up question about the influences, because in addition to the animes, I'm like, okay, what about the anime-inspired shows and everything else? First two pop in my head are Code Lyoko and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Those are our jams. Because I
thought about the Boondocks. That was my first thought.
Also the Boondocks. Just like Twin said, if it's within 7 degrees of separation, it's a part of the fandom. So we're gonna keep it.
Fair
so then my follow-up fandom then would then also be Disney. Love Disney. I stand by Disney. I love all the different movies, the shows, both the live actions, the animated series, the animated movies, and everything else, because of all the different lessons and everything else we get from them. And it's very, very telling how our entire generation is like, okay, we grew up with this movie, then we revisit the same movie 20 years later. We're like, yeah, it still rings true after all this time, and now I have a deeper understanding. So, plus, I mean, music and everything else is always fantastic. Can't beat it.
That's fair. Shoot, I thought Demarius was gonna claim Prynz. I feel like, JD, are you here to stir the pot? Because I feel like you stirred the pot in the last one. But I digress. Lizzette, why don't you tell us about yourself? Who are you? What is your passion? And what is your number one fandom?
All right. So can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to leave it as is. My name is Lizzette Lewis. My number one passion in life is teaching. I am a teacher. I'm a special education teacher, grade 11. I teach ELA, social studies, and I've been teaching chemistry this year. We're doing transmutations this week, so I've been trying to, give an arm and a leg so I can bring back somebody from the dead. But I'm not supposed to. Anyway, I'm also into fitness. I'm also a certified Zumba instructor, personal trainer. I'm a mom to a child on the autism spectrum. He's 10 years old. He thinks he's a man. He's not. I have to keep telling him that on a daily basis. Anything else about me? Oh, I'm a cosplayer. Duh. Today makes my 16th year anniversary of cosplay. So I just put that up. I'm 43. I'm old. I would say my number one passion, of course, would definitely be anime. But if I gotta pick one out of all the animes, of course, it's the one that pretty much ruled most of my life, which is Sailor Moon. So much so that I have it tattooed on my back. Without Sailor Moon, I pretty much wouldn't be the fantasy girl that I am right now, and why I'm all things beautiful and magical, and it keeps me young in spirit. Although I have my Deku, my Hero Academia graduation cap hanging up behind me. That's not the point. Point is, it's Sailor Moon for life.
Fair. Sailor Moon is the gateway drug for many. Indeed. Even though like my first anime was Speed Racer, but I didn't know it was an anime, so that doesn't count. But anyway, let's get into this Turning Red discussion because I really want to get you guys' perspective on the film and how it panned it out, you know? So I guess I know. Thank you for laughing. I appreciate that. I know. Thank you so much. But I want to start from like the 30,000, I guess, view in terms of like, what were your overall thoughts on the film? And then we can kind of go down and pick it apart bit by bit. Lizzette, I see your hand, so I know you're itching to give your bit on this. Go ahead.
You know, I watched the first moment it came out when I found out it was based in the early 2000s. Mm-hmm. And it's talking about, even though I was out of high school by then, I was in college. Also, you know, it was talking about like boy bands and everything like that. I was like, oh, I'm totally into it. And then when I saw the animation style, it was like very influence heavy by anime. I was like, oh, I'm down. Overall, my first thought about it, I loved it. I loved it very much so. Of course, I have no Asian in my family, but of course, I can relate to the story, coming of age, turning of age, and having an overbearing mother who will not let you grow up. So eventually, you know, you have to let loose your emotions. I wasn't prepared for the part where she becomes a woman and, you know, the mother was prepared and my son turns to me and says, hey, what's pads? So now great. I have to have this whole discussion. And you know what? I'm glad. Canada has always been known for like having those conversations about womanly ways in their shows, which I totally love from head to toe. So I love the fact that they Turning Panda. Not only was it about like coming of age and puberty, and everything like that, but also, you know, talking about emotions and everything like that. So first impressions, I loved it. I love the music. I mean, so much so I downloaded it. I wish Four Town was a real band. I love the little Asian girl, the little Korean girl. She was my favorite. She's down for anything.
Yo, the way she was playing dodgeball was like, yo, she was so serious with the dodgeball.
She's so serious. I loved her. I loved her.
And war.
Right. But May is definitely, I understand where Homegirl was coming from. Like, sometimes you gotta let loose the bear, let loose the panda, and let mom know, like, hey, I'm growing up, and there's nothing you can do and deal with it. I kind of wish I had repaired the damage with my mother. Fortunately, my mother's no longer with me. But every time I watch, I think this age of Disney movies is dealing with family trauma because mothers can be villains too. That's my first take.
That's fair. That's fair. Any takers between the twins? Go ahead.
I think that overarchingly, it hit close to home because I'm gonna just actually, since I know he's in here and reading the comments, little brother, but it hit close to home. And a lot of the emotions that May is feeling, a lot of the expectations, the pressure, which is ironic considering the last After Dark, all three of us are at. It's almost a copy and paste for me in my life, and I had my panda moments several times, and it just like I appreciate that kid movies, quote unquote, nowadays are tackling real problems and not in like a, you know, my Bambi, my mom passed away situation or something like that. But like, these are actual real every day. They may not be catastrophic, but they still have things, spiritual, mental trauma, harm. And how do we navigate that while we are still respecting our elders and our parents and honoring our cultural relationship and heritage? And just 10 out of 10, gold stars, 5 out of 5, all of the above. I'm in love with this movie, and I've seen it so many times.
Well, good. I'm glad to know that you guys have seen it multiple times, because I'm like, I know that your perspective can change as you watch a film, the first time versus seeing it multiple times. So I'm glad that you all had that perspective. So Demarius, I feel like I should be like, Demarius, Lord of, I don't know, Brooklyn or wherever you're, Lord of Washington.
Don't gas.
Ask yourself.
Lord Demarius, please.
So I'd say for me, because I've seen the movie twice. I saw it shortly after it dropped on Disney Plus, and then I just watched it prior to the podcast. But it sits a lot in my mind about, just as Twin was saying, as Lizzette was saying, about the trauma and how it happens and where it comes from. But I'll say that the part of the movie, because so I missed it the first time I watched it. The second time I watched it hit me right in my chest. Right at the very beginning, when she was talking about her relationship with her family and with her mother and like everything else that she's doing. And she was like, the one line that came that said, if you always choose to honor such and such, you may never honor yourself. Mm-hmm. And while I was never a 13-year-old girl, I was a 13-year-old teenager nonetheless. Mm-hmm. I was still a 13-year-old boy. I was a high achieving student. I had a wide and diverse friend group, but there's always that pushback between the person that I was in some spaces versus the person that I had to be necessarily when I was at home, and thinking about doing so solely out of obligation and responsibility. Mm-hmm. And just as Twin was also saying the last time we were discussing Encanto, to me it kind of seems like Mei, Isabella, and Ming are all 3 different versions of the same person dealing with some degree of generational trauma. And when they then choose, when they choose or otherwise have the opportunity to be able to properly embrace it, and then what happens whenever it lasts for too long. And I'll definitely say that this film was another one that kind of helped make me sit down with myself and be like, so where are you choosing to honor your obligations, and where are you choosing to honor yourself, and where does that most matter? But the point that's even greater above that is the beauty and power of friendship. Because the entire time, the first time I was watching this movie, like I immediately went back to my high school squad that we've all been friends since middle school. I'm like, I really appreciate you guys as my friends, because I can always know that you guys are gonna be there. But the second time around as I watched it, I was like, sometimes those really, really good friendships, or those people who see you as you are versus the person they want you to be, then brings out the best in you in spite of your flaws.
That's real. You just sitting here writing down questions. Go ahead, share it, because I want to give you guys space to just talk.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback on that I think of that phrase that people get wrong, that blood's thicker than water, when the actual phrase is the blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of the womb. Yes. And that one's chosen family tends to be a much more intimate, deep relationship that actually makes us feel ourselves and feel whole. And then sometimes the people that you share blood with, and while that can be traumatic in its own sense, it doesn't make either relationship invalid. Like, both are important and both are things that are necessary to be whole, but it doesn't mean that you have to sacrifice one or the other to appease, something. Who was muting? Sorry. My bad. But yeah, and so just picking back on that, I think about how me and Twin are, and like when we met our freshman year of college at Hampton University, and
yes, HBCU.
Yeah, 10 out of 10, and I think about, my experiences of being in a band sorority, and I think about being in my experiences of being in a music fraternity, the things I've experienced even in my career. Each of those relationships are different, but the person that I am in each of those situations honors Thank you, Marcus.
Lord,
Thank
child.
you.
Don't say that, because I went to grad school at Howard, so I don't really, I'll let it go.
I will say, if your sheepskin does not say Howard or Hampton, this is not an argument for you. I'm going to say that. This is an in-house problem. But anyway, moving on. Honoring yourself is a multifaceted thing. And as someone whose passion is gender and identity and whatever, you first have to have that self-awareness, like May needed to at the very end. Like she was it was literally at the very end when they were getting ready to pull it away from her, where she was like, no, this is who I am. This is a part of me. And regardless of whether or not you appreciate it, I appreciate it.
To piggyback on that one also, the other part about that is beautiful is the fact that May always knew what the other parts of her were, and then she was choosing to put those in the background. But like I said earlier, it's that affirmation from people who see you as you are that can then help you to better embrace yourself. Because at the very beginning, right before the panda even kicked in, her friends were always constantly affirming her of like, yo, you're putting too much on yourself. You're great as you are. Keep it going. Even when the panda happened, because I don't know about you, but if I pulled up to my homegirl's house, my homeboy's house, and there was a giant furry monster in the room, I don't know if I necessarily would have went in like that. But they immediately said, fam, you're beautiful and you're furry and fluffy. I like this. There was no question about it whatsoever, and that was the affirmation that May needed. And I even think about those times where, like, wherever I'm like settling into some kind of self-doubt, or I'm worried about what's going on. I think back to those safe spaces with the people that I know, love, and care about me. And when May was going through the panda testing with her mom, and she sat back, she's like, it's in my happy place, or happy places where her friendship was.
Right.
And then that was always going to necessarily be her anchor. And I can always say, and this is going to be a shout out, I'm going to call you all by name. This is going to be a shout out to Tyler, Doug, Jimmy, Mary, Susanna, and Josie. Like, you 8, same as you 7, and the 8 of us as we've been respectively from between either 1999 or 2003 or 2004, 2005, or 2007 have been a huge part in helping me to be the person that I am. And I appreciate you, because you were among the first sets of people to be like, hey, yo, Demarius is a cool guy. He's here. And it doesn't matter anything else, because I care about his friendship and I care about him. So that's what I'm always going to operate as. And that is such a huge core of that movie, because then it helps to show how you can then cultivate that same kind of love and respect for other relationships that you have, just as May was eventually able to do and have a much more sincere relationship with her mom.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Lizzette. I think it's so cute that you're a teacher and you raise your hand all the time.
I can't help it, and I apologize for being a year and a half in quarantine and remote learning. I gotta raise my hand, but to also interject what Demarius said in regards to, like, my friends being my center, being who I was. Like, growing up, when I was going through the changes in life, my mother didn't believe me. My mother refused to believe that I was going through the change, right? I was a late bloomer. She didn't believe me. But my neighborhood friends had to come together. I'm like, your daughter got her period. Give her some pads. No one believed me, and they really, truly, my friends growing up, my next door neighbor, I call my brother. My son is named after him. Like, his middle name is my next door neighbor's name, right? His name is Christopher. Friend since we were in diapers, right? He was my rock. He is pretty much one to help me get through most of my teenage years. My best friend, unfortunately, she passed away when I turned 20, right? She had an instant heart attack, blood clot, right? In 1999, never forget that. Wasn't for her, I wouldn't have even known what is happening to me. I was playing out in the street, like, what the hell is happening? TMI moment. I'm sorry, guys. But point being, my friends were my rocks. They were my centers. Without them, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. When I got kicked out the house, who was there for me but my friends. My friends took me in, helped me get myself together, and if it was for them, I don't think I would even be in the situation that I am right now. So I have to say, without them, I don't think I would be where I'm at, or I'd probably be 6 feet under. So I definitely want to say they're definitely, my friends were definitely my center, my rocks, and still are to this day.
Go ahead, Prynz.
Real quick, I want to challenge when you say TMI about talking about menstruation, because that's almost the entire point of the movie, is shying away and breaking those traditions of things that we just know and we habitually do, and not questioning why that is, because the movie's literally about a metaphor of getting your period. Right. And as a non-woman who gets their period, I talk like, yeah, I'm on the rag, or like I use colloquialisms because I'd be out and about, but like it's not TMI. We all know it happens. If you have a uterus, it happens. It is what it is. And it's almost like I when you said it, I was just like, I have to say something, because it's just like it's not TMI. Like, you know, you already had introduced the topic of this is what's going to be talking about. So when you say TMI, it's like, no, it's actually quite literally the point of this entire podcast tonight.
And you were absolutely right. I don't know. It's still a bad habit of saying, you know, because people are like, oh, why are you telling everybody? Like, I don't know if oh Lord, if Cece, I don't know if you've been like following what's been going on since March. Like, I had a blood clot in my leg. Found out I had blood clots in my lungs, right? Oh, I've been putting it out there in the universe, and because of that, I had to stop my birth control, and because of that, now I have my periods have gotten super heavy. Oh yeah. But nobody is sitting there and like no one's been yelling at me like, Liz, you sharing way too much information. And the only reason why I'm sharing this is because like now I'm going and ready to go through the next change, which is I'm about to get a hysterectomy. Because I just can't deal with it anymore. But you're absolutely right. It is not TMI. It is a part of life. And since everything that's been happening to me in my life, and since this movie really has come out, like I said, my son turned to me and said, what are pads? I said, well, we're going to have this conversation right now, aren't we? And I turned around and like my sister was mortified. And I said, listen, like, and my sister like grew up, like she was more close to my mom than I was. So my mom was very sheltered, like, oh, I didn't know the name of my vagina until high school. Okay. No, my son doesn't know what a penis is, testicles, vagina, breast. He knows all of that. He's 10. I've taught him since he was, because I didn't want nothing to happen to him. Point being, when he asked me about the pads and everything like that, I said, well, you know, so when mommy goes to the bathroom and you see the blood, listen, I've dragged my child with me when my period places. Okay, sorry, not sorry, right? And he was like, oh yeah, I know. And I said, okay, well, once a month, a woman goes through that and they wear pads in order to, you know, make sure they stay clean. He said, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. And he went about his business.
Go about his day.
Right. Listen, my Carrie already knows where babies come from. I wouldn't tell him. The child went on YouTube and figured it out for himself. He said the tadpoles go into the eggs that are inside the ladies after they have sex, and that's where 9 months later a baby comes out. I'm like,
and it's just that, and that's almost definitely the element of the movie, because May, when she's freaking out, it's like, oh my God, my life is over. And her dad accidentally says whatever. And she's like, what did you say?
Right.
May was never prepared for any of this. And I almost like, it's definitely, this movie talks about and touches on, if we would stop shying away from the things that we're scared of or think that is inappropriate, our kids might potentially be able to be better prepared, and therefore not have to be, trauma should not be a rite of passage. Like outside of like some type of religious or spiritual or whatever, like indigenous culture, like everyone has their own definition of trauma, but like negative coping cycle trauma should not be a rite of passage, which basically, again, the entire point of the movie.
Right. Just like we should normalize things on a regular basis. And like I said, my son is 10. He may be on the spectrum, but he understands life. And I'm like, oh, as long as you understand that so far, you on the right path. Go ahead.
Right. Go ahead, Demarius.
So, in my unwashed male opinion about this particular movie, I can actually say that I learned more about what a relationship with this part of life is from this film than I ever have at any other point in life at all. And I can be completely honest, because biologically, I have a quote unquote understanding of what it is.
So an academic understanding.
An academic understanding, but no kind of personal understanding what it could be. One, because it's not going to ever be my experience. But growing up, whether it's in my household or whether it's at school or anything else, this was something that was never talked about, or something that was shied away from, or something that was demonized for simply being what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say that as I've grown and as I've tried to learn, as I tried to better understand, this movie is going to make these kind of conversations much more normalized.
Yes.
Much less awkward and much less weird, because we shouldn't be trying to demonize or otherwise shy away from that which happens naturally.
Right.
Or that which is a literal part of the process for the reason why any of us are here in the first place. Why are we shying away from it? And number two, bodily autonomy, and let it be what it is. And that's all I'm going to say.
The fact that they literally tried to fight May to avoid going to I'm keeping it. And they're like, what? And you know what? Now that I think about it, considering that a period is a unfertilized, not child, whatever, body, whatever, and she's saying, I'm keeping it. Going a step further, it could be an allegory for teen pregnancy too, or even just any type of pregnancy. Like, I'm keeping it. And the entire family's like, no, you're ruining your life. It's that person's decision if they want to keep it. So
talk about it.
You touched on it. 20, and considering, I apologize in advance if it gets a little political, but as a non-binary person with a uterus, and it's a whole thing for me.
You apologize? Do you know what podcast you on?
Because I know this could be a story. Considering
it's fine.
You got the right one. You better talk about it.
Considering the current climate of things and how, like, I literally boo-hooed and sobbed when the Roe v. Wade thing was hinted at on Twitter. Like, I got the notification as like a big like bloop, and I was like, excuse me. And I'm doing a deep dive, and I'm on Twitter, and I'm going through threads and threads and threads, and I had a whole panic attack because one of my personal fears as a uterus haver who is literally only keeping my uterus because I want children, and I know I'm not ready. So when those little oopses happen, they immediately get ousted. Like, this concept is terrifying for me. Not having bodily autonomy is terrifying for me. It's one thing to experience that as a cis woman when I was younger, but now as a non-binary uterus haver, oh my God, like the things that people are saying as if they have an ounce of a decision-making capability over what I do with my body that I have to pay for, that my insurance may not cover. So this movie with Twin talking about bodily autonomy, I didn't even think about it till literally just now. And I'm like, holy crap, absolutely. May wanted to live her gosh darn life. And as a trans person who takes testosterone injections, that's absolutely what I want to do. And I got to fight for that too. I got to fight to be a trans person who wants to have a baby.
And you know, we'll just go ahead and push it a step further, because when I heard about the Roe v. Wade decision unraveling, not only did my legal mind go all the way down the rabbit hole, and we are not making this kind of discussion right now, but my concern immediately went to my grandmothers, my sisters, my aunties, my cousins.
What do you mean? Friends. You're thinking about somebody other than yourself?
Because I'm just over here like, because I'm just like, why exactly are people having an opinion about something with which they will never have the full experience of, nor will they ever fully educate themselves to properly even have a possible qualified opinion on in the matter in the first place? And finally, above all else, I'm not here to pass a moral judgment. Why? Because all of your morals, all your moral decisions are between you and God. That is where it's going to be. And since you are over there and God's up here and y'all like this, and I'm over here in my lane, I have no opinion about what's going on between the two of you here. Why? I didn't bring you here. I did not give the life to you whatsoever by any means, shape, or form. And it's not my responsibility to dictate your choices. Therefore, I respect your right to choose for yourself how you want to live your life. Why? Because that is the fundamental history and tradition of the nation, for everyone to have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I stay out the equation when it doesn't bother me. Because just like I said earlier, liberty is the freedom to choose to do what you want, but citizenship is the discretion to do so without infringing upon anybody else to do the same. That's when it is okay.
You know, Twin, absolutely. Because I mean, there's three ways to stay: in your lane, over there, and out of my business.
And I shouldn't be supporting any kind of system that goes against you being able to make the proper choices for yourself. Especially when I have no interest or say in the matter whatsoever.
I just want to piggyback off of that, being that, again, I teach 11th grade ELA, right? One of the final things that my students are doing right now, currently during this, for the last couple of weeks, because New York City, we don't end school till June 28th. Anyway, yeah, I'm tired. Anyway, my students were writing and giving presentations on social justice issues. And one of my students picked abortion, and two of my students picked abortion, right? They both feel the same way, that it's a woman's right. Nobody has to say anything like that. So they asked me my opinion, and I told them, I'm gonna be straight up. And it's just like what Prince John had said in regards to, like, when May said that she wanted to keep her panda. At 17, I didn't have a choice. I was talked out of keeping my panda, aka I got pregnant at 17. Okay. And I told my kids I had an abortion. I have no problem with that. Now, that was my choice. Growing up Catholic, I had a hard time in dealing with it, and coming to terms with it and everything like that. But, I feel like it was for the best choice, because now I got the little boy that I was always supposed to have, right? My point being, I told them that, I said, but some people feel they have this need to tell women what to do with their bodies. So one of the girls says, so what do we say about that? So I said, you know what you say? And I said it nice and loud for everyone to hear: stay out of my uterus. It is nobody's business but yours. And so tomorrow, one of the presentations is going to be a Socratic seminar. And I've seen the questions that my student is going to be presenting to the class, and it's going to be a tough conversation. It's going to make some of the boys in the class squirm, and I want them to.
Good.
Let's normalize this. Like, this is a conversation, and I'm glad these kids are understanding, like, what is going on. And when they did the research, they were like they didn't know outside of New York City, out of New York State, there are states where literally are like, if you get pregnant, you get raped, and trigger warning, sorry, I apologize. Anything like that the state will arrest the woman if she tries to get rid of the child. And it's crazy. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but I'll let you go, because and when you said about, people talking and telling you what to do, one thing that I think is a topic that constantly is reoccurring in the movie, and it's like this whole conversation really, is that honoring the love that the people who care for you have for you doesn't necessarily mean that it absolves. And I think I said this on the last thing too: the love you have for me doesn't absolve the harm that you caused me. And you can want the best for me, and you can have all these ideas of who I am and my potential, but I need you to not be obsessed with the fan fiction version of myself, but I need you to be obsessed with the canon version of myself. We're going to be a little nerdy for a moment. And that requires some deep diving. That requires some hard conversations. That requires actually understanding what the heck you are engaging in. You really not exactly. Like, you can't sit there and say you love someone as much as you claim you do, and you're literally causing them pain, even if they're not telling you. You cannot, in good conscience, in good faith, regardless of what religion you are, spirituality, creed, culture, hair, I don't care. If you are actively causing harm to someone, your love does not mean that you don't have to take accountability. Correct. If you sit there and say, but I love you, that doesn't mean crap. Because I'm a trigger warning. Domestic violence victims heard I love you often and still got beat up and still got hurt and still were assaulted. So that's an extreme example, but physical pain is just as valid as emotional pain. It's just as valid as spiritual pain. Like, it's all pain. Love doesn't stop the pain. I'm sorry. If you stab me in the chest and say, I love you, damn, rethink that.
to pick up on this one because
this got serious. I'm so sorry.
It's okay because what is this? The point of the movie. Because the movie also talks about the generational trauma that's already been happening and occurring since way back when with Sun Yi. Because if we look into the movie and we hear about the legend of Sun Yi and how Sun Yi called upon the spirit of the panda and she became a red panda and she passed it on to her daughters as a gift and as a blessing, also to protect them. That was the original purpose. Then Ming said, but eventually our family decided on a new way and now we're doing something different. I can't help but think that something similar to what happened between May's mom and May's grandma is what forced that change, because otherwise it would not have occurred. And then when May decided to stand against that and say, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with this, that is what caused the rift and the problem, because everyone was worried about the negatives of what would happen, but rather than seeing the beauty for what it necessarily could be. And just as Twin was saying, people can love you all that they want, whether it is your friends, whether it is your very close friends, whether it is your significant other, whether it is your family.
Do they love you, or are they just saying that?
So real quick, what I will say is sometimes, there's some sets of people who don't really love you at all, and it's only to suit their own purpose. They're over there. I'm specifically talking about those over here in which we know in our heart of hearts that their love is trying to be genuine. And they may be doing the very best that they can with what they
got. Yeah.
And you can always see the intent behind every single action. You can always see it. And as well as seeing the intent, you can also see the framework from which it was forged. You can see the thoughts that are in the head, and you can see the feelings that are in the heart. Because out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And as a man or woman speaking in their heart, so are they. All three of these things have to work in tandem. But that doesn't mean that just because they should just be like, it's like, no, I do love you dearly and I'm doing my best. Yes, I understand that, but this is the harm that was caused. I recognize what you're saying, but I need your accountability for the harm that was caused. Otherwise, we cannot move forward. That is what is necessary. And we saw that was the conversation with Ming's mom, and Ming's grandma in the bamboo forest. Right. Because when Ming came to her mom and said, I apologize for X, Y, and Z, and her mom said, you don't have to apologize. You are my daughter. They came to that understanding of we were doing the best that we could and we got it wrong. And we recognize the fact that we got it wrong and we are going to do better moving forward. Ming and May at the mirror. When she said, the further you go, the prouder I'll be, and let Ming make her own decision. That was her recognition of, I loved you the best that I could. And I will continue to love you the best that I can. I'm going to do better now. And it's okay that you choose what you want because I see you as you are and not the person that I want you to be. And I want you to be who you are over here. If you want to back it on up to Encanto real quick, because it's my jam. When Mirabel and Abuela Alma met at the river, they both recognized that they were doing their best of what they could. But Mirabel held Abuela responsible for the harm that she caused, was willing to forgive and reconcile and to move forward. But that accountability had to be taken. So regardless of the relationships and everything else with the love, because we understand that love love can cover a multitude of sin. It still does. However, the forgiveness and the reconciliation and the moving forward can only come by means of accountability.
Accountability. First of all, can I just, before you go, Prince John, I just want to say how much I love how like all of your occupations are showing up in this conversation. Like we got Lizzette with the whiteboard, adding the commentary with the white, raising the hand, politely waiting. Prince John's coming in with the taglines and like the campaign ads that we could like all get. We just put it on a billboard. Like, look, what did you say earlier? Something about, the love you have for me doesn't absolve the harm you caused. So I was like, okay, let me go ahead with these little billboard taglines, quotes up in here. And then we got Demarius like literally pleading a case. Like there is a jury on YouTube right now, and we are about to deliberate the outcome of Turning Red. So, but please go ahead. I'm just loving this conversation.
No, you're fine. I mean, that means we're where we need to be. But like, I taking it a bit back to what Twin was saying about, you know, back from Sun Yi and how she passed on to her daughters as a blessing. I almost question how a generational blessing became a generational curse, in that Sun Yi requested and prayed for to be turned into, or have the ability to turn into, a red panda because of the circumstances at the time. But when you pass on a blessing or a gift to the next generation, but they don't have the same circumstances, the same context, the same emotion of the time of the blessing, it's going to get diluted, and it's like a really bad game of telephone that goes on for centuries. And if it's one thing that I think people of color, Black people, and specifically, I'm going to say Black people, that's one kind, but I personally, from watching movies like this, talking and having discussions about them on Twitter and social media and stuff like that, it's something that's prevalent for us. We pass on our stories because we are in an oratory type culture across the board, just being non-white, because, you know, our stories were literally like robbed from us. But like, we don't, and we can literally not put them in the same context. Like, as much as I may personally talk to someone about what it means for me to be non-binary or what my journey is, it will never, ever, ever, ever 110% click. And when I choose to raise my children as genderless or whatever until they tell me otherwise, it will never, ever, ever fully click for them until I get to that moment. And the same type of thing. If you pass on wealth, money, finances, or whatever, those trust fund babies tend to be poor managers of their money because the context is not there. If you just give it to them and don't provide context, it either becomes a curse or it becomes destruction, which is what ended up happening with Ming. I think Ming was that, I hate to say it this way, the comeuppance of generations of passing on a blessing or a curse or a gift and not providing the proper context, like honoring our ancestors and honoring our elders. Why are we doing this? If it's just, that's what we've always done, that's not a good response.
At all.
It's just not. There has to be a reason. If it's not because they pass down wisdom or because they are the foundation, or like people who go through the ancestry thing or doing the African ancestry, or, you know, getting the DNA with the saliva. Knowing the academic story is one thing. And what Demarius said earlier about menstruation, having an academic answer is okay. We literally saw throughout the movie. They live at the temple. They constantly are giving the story. But they don't truly know what Sun Yi was experiencing. And Mei Mei didn't know until the literal very end, where she says, I'm not going to regret this, am I? And Sun Yi smiles and grabs her up in a true ancestral hug, and her ancestral language.
It puts it together.
Look at the movie Black Panther and look at how we honor our ancestors and we watch our ancestors hug us and hold us close. And so he did, I know different cultures have their own thing where they touch noses. You finally understand after generations of watching my daughters, my granddaughters, my great granddaughters get it wrong. You finally see from my perspective how this is a gift and a blessing. Oh, we haven't church in here.
And let's pick up on this one a little bit right quick, because it's also not just about just knowing it, but also understanding it and appreciating it from the position that we're in. Because you always see the tweet floating around where it's like, oh, I was having a conversation with my parents or conversation with my grandparents about the way the world is going. It's like, oh, you know, you should be able to make enough to do X, Y, and Z. You gave us rules for a world that no longer exists. Rather than giving us, but what needs to be passed on is the appreciation for what those rules are able to dictate, and then moving towards how to then adjust it to the rest of your world. Because that is then how you become yourself. Otherwise, you just become a damaged version of where you came from. In addition, not only with the passing on the trauma, so let's talk, because especially in the Black community, we always hear the whole respect your elders and don't question me, right? But then sometimes what happens is your elders will hold on to whatever their stories and their traumas are, and then maybe not recognize that they had passed them on until 2 or 3 or 4 generations down the line.
Right.
And you have to sit back and look back and say, wow, had I recognized what my trauma was, maybe I would not have caused that damage. Right. Because clearly I can see the damage because it's sitting right here in front of me. And it needs to be corrected. And that can only happen by what? Recognizing your trauma, open communication, and taking accountability for what was done. because we can recognize that you were doing the best that you could with what you had, but that doesn't absolve you from the wrong that then also comes. Because you always hear the phrase, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Your intentions should be good, but the actions may dictate something different. You may have been trying to do the best that you could, but you still ended up passing on trauma. You may have been trying to avoid the trauma that you experienced, much like Ying did with her mother, and subsequently pass on the correspondent trauma to the next generation in front of you and be confused as to why it's happening.
Right. Go ahead, Liz. I want to give you a chance for you guys to get final thoughts because we pretty much got like 5 minutes.
I want to piggyback off of what you were saying, as you know, really as someone who comes from a line of trauma, you know, growing old school. My parents, you know, my mother and father believed in beating a child, you know, and everything like that. It got passed down to me. It stops with me. So was the alcoholism. So does the not addressing the mental issues. I'm in therapy. I make sure that even though my son, if he does wrong, I have a conversation with him. I apologize to my son. Something that parents don't do. They don't apologize anymore. I have open and honest conversations with my child. If he asks me a question on why, like he asked me like, why did I leave his dad? I told him, I was like, you saw we were fighting. We weren't working out too well, you know, X, Y, and Z. I'm going to be open and I'm going to be honest. Why are we hiding things and not having conversations with our children so they have a better understanding of what's going on? Regardless of what my child has been labeled, my child understands what is going on because it's going to end with me. And that's what I feel like with this movie and why I connected with it. Like, you know, I watched it with my sister, you know, who, again, was very close to our mother. I was not close because my mother did not beat her as much. She didn't beat her at all. I took the brunt of the beatings because I questioned everything growing up. Like, why are we doing this? And you know, one of the things is you don't question your elders. You know what I'm saying? So my sister took everything to heart. And, you know, I just turned to her and I said, you know, we need to have these conversations and we need to be open and honest. And I think that's why I have such a great rapport with my students as well, because I don't sugarcoat anything for them. I tell them the harsh realities of what it was growing up, especially here in New York City in the 90s and in the early 2000s. We got to have these conversations. And I plan on having those conversations with my son. His father is still hesitant about having the birds and the bees talk. I said, your son already knows what sex is and where it comes from. So you can stop that right there. Okay, that's number one. Number two, we will sit down and we will have the talk because God, I do not want my son to be another statistic out on the street. And when I get my son for this weekend, I'm going to sit him down and I'm going to have a conversation with him about all these school shootings. Because why? He needs to know. He needs to know why we have lockdown drills. We don't have gun control laws, but we have lockdown drills. You know? I'm going to have these conversations with my son. I need to have an open and honest dialogue. Communication is the key. And this is where I think, and I truly believe, where we can stop a lot of the family trauma that we pass down from generation to generation. Is like, it's got to stop somewhere and come to recognize we need to have these conversations and have open communications with our children.
Yeah.
Let's pick up on this one right quick. And I'm gonna pivot slightly from the Turning Red and I'm gonna roll over here to the Legend of Korra real quick.
Oh, your number one fandom? The one you should have said that I thought you were gonna say that you didn't say?
That's why I asked the question of when you say anime, I said, do you have anime influences? Because we agree that Avatar and Legend of Korra are anime influence and within 7 degrees separation of your fandom, correct? Okay.
Look, you man. Oh
Thank you.
God, the publicist anyway. and the lawyer walk into a bar.
we walk into a bar, we order mojitos. That's what happens.
And the teacher writes down, the teacher takes notes.
Can we not do I don't like mint. Moving forward, continue what you're about to say, but no mint.
Okay. We'll pick a different correspondent violence that we can enjoy necessarily together.
Let's go axe throwing. I like that.
I'm okay with that. We can do the axe throwing and choose the liquor-based violence later on, because that's how it goes. Okay. Anyways, so we see in the legend we see between the legends of the previous avatars where they are free to go throughout the rest of the world and develop their own journey and be whatever kind of influence for the world they want to be, up until Aang, to where the world is then heading into a space of trauma. And in an attempt to protect him, they drove him away, which then threw the whole world out of balance and out of chaos, and it forced Aang to grow up really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. And in so doing, we see the trauma that was then imposed upon him, then translated to Bumi. The first, a non-bender, Aang being the last of his kind. Then you have Kaya, his next one. Oh no, she's a waterbender. She's not necessarily of my kind. Completely forgetting that she's then the next waterbender to come from the Southern Water Tribe, and therefore no longer alone. But we'll leave that by itself. And then you have Tenzin, where he placed all of that pressure upon him, saying, "You are my golden child." And you see how the sibling relationships break down. But let's go over here to Korra, because in Korra, we find out she's the Avatar early, and then we find out in season 2 and in season 3, the Red Lotus were trying to kidnap her, and therefore they kept her in the home, only as a means to protect her. And what ended up happening was she then was incapable of handling the regular villains across the rest of the day because she lacked the context. And had she had the opportunity to travel the world and to learn about everything else, she may have been better equipped. Not saying that she didn't eventually arise to be the best Avatar that she could and ultimately become a better version of herself, but a lot of her trauma could have also been avoided by the proper structuring within the home. The headstrongness, we're gonna put that over there because she had to get that one together. That was her own personal choice. But the separation of her from the rest of the 4 nations and her private school education as the literal leader of the world and sole spiritual guru is what made it difficult. And it was because of Korra that she then broke generations of trauma to put everything back together, including the reunion between man and spirit that was once separated by one. Korra is a literal breaker of generational curses for her family, for her tribe, for her world, and for her lineage. That all could have been avoided if the proper stories and lessons were passed on down. We see the same thing in Encanto. We see the same thing in The Lion King. We see the same thing in what other movies am I going to start rolling through? Whoa, Moana. We see the same thing in Moana. This is around the Moana Nui podcast. Because you had the series of people who traveled and they settled, and then all of a sudden bad stuff started happening. They said, we're going to shut ourselves off. And you had the one individual who was willing to push the boundary that then put everything else back in order. We now see with Ming, she was able to restore the trauma of generations upon generations and restore the gift that Sun Yi really meant for it to be. Sun Yi intended the gift for it to be a blessing and a protection, but she was the defender of all red pandas. Which to me says, if she was a defender of which to me says, if she was a defender of red pandas, she must have had an affinity for red pandas in the first place if that was the thing that she asked for. Right. Because she saw something beautiful in it, and that's what she wanted to pass on along. May was finally able to see the beauty in the panda, and that's why her and Sun Yi were able to then link. So now from May, whatever else that looks like, that trauma is now going to heal because she broke that cycle. Because someone was willing to finally have a conversation about really what was going on. The lesson that the rest of us take is to then have those conversations about what those traumas look like. Because I can definitely say when I go to work, I tell different aspects of my story. I talk to my coworkers about what's going on because it helps to put the context in about the decisions that I make. Because every decision is based in a story, but if you don't know the story, you're not going to comprehend the decision.
Absolutely. Preach. Right. Context is everything. When that hashtag historical context matters was trending, I was all about that because that's like sociology and history is my background. So that's why I'm enjoying this conversation so much because it's like peak people watching for a social scientist. But I'm loving every bit of it. It's every bit as brilliant as it is entertaining.
Fact. My undergrad is also in history too.
Okay. We got history up in here. All right, cool. Well, actually, I have really enjoyed this very thoughtful breakdown of like, even when you said, Demarius, about like the breakdown of whether or not May wanted to keep the panda and how that translates to bodily autonomy. That was really powerful to me. I just want to give you guys the opportunity to share any final thoughts you may have on the film, and then also give you guys a chance to shout out your socials and what projects you may have going on, so folks can continue to follow you and stay tuned until the next episode where you guys will be on. Because I know Moana and Dana are going to want to have you back. I already know that's the case. So, but yeah, by all means, go for it. Final thoughts. Like Jerry Springer.
My final thought is that movies like this and Encanto and this new generation of movies, I think, are really important, not just for us late millennials, early Gen Zers or whatever, Zoomers, I guess is the term now. I think it's important just for everyone of all ages to be able to get that by proxy vindication. Oh, it's not just me, because we're all having these same experiences and having the same stories. Almost some of it's not, it may not be copy and paste, but it's very much, we're all going through the same things. And I appreciate and I look forward to seeing each and every one continue to come out, continue to tackle the stories that we're all avoiding to tell. And for me, my socials are right there at Prynz John, PRYNZJON, on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. I'm on them all. Projects coming out. I'm going to start doing makeup tutorials and things or whatever, because under popular demand. And I haven't officially announced this. I mean, I've been talking about it, but I haven't officially posted this yet. But I am doing a partnership with Merit Beauty, and I'll be reviewing some of their products. And I will be an affiliate, and I will post this on all my socials. You can buy their products. I do get a commission, but please, I will absolutely tell you guys the honest to God truth about how the product is. But it's very much, you know, I have something to do. I'm on the road. I got stuff to do, but I don't have time for a full beat. That's what this product. That's what these products are. Simple, clean, easy, and that's exactly what my tutorials will be for you. Simple, maybe not so clean. Very trust the process, but very easy.
I love it. Go ahead, Prynz John. I love it. All right. Who's next? Anybody? Any takers? Will it be the twin or will it be the Liz?
I'll go. So my final thought is I'm loving these new Disney movies that are coming out. Any story where it's dealing with generational trauma and real life situations. So I hope Disney continues doing it, make everyone mad. Personally, I don't care. I'm like, these are the stories that need to be told. I know a lot of people who didn't like Turning Red and didn't care for Encanto, and I'm looking at them like, you're crazy, because parents definitely can be the villains. Trust me. In any case, overall, Turning Red was a great movie. I really enjoyed watching it with my son, and I love the fact that as he's getting older, he's asking the really important questions, and I am more than happy to sit there and have those conversations with him. You can find me on most of social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, under Sailor Ecstasy with an X. I'm not doing anything big, or over the summer I'll be at BlurCon, probably go to Otakon. I'll definitely be at New York Comic Con. Come up and say hi. I'm trying to run some panels, and I'm trying to, educate the masses and be cute about it.
I know that's right. All right, Lord Demarius, bring us home. Lord Demarius, bring us home in your chariot awaits.
Oh, he thinking this might be powerful. Go ahead.
I know, right? That's what I'm like.
as I'm charting my chariot across the sun.
Okay, Apollo.
Come on now.
So I'd say for me, my final thoughts on this movie is that it's important to heal. Because if you can't heal, you won't move forward. It's not a matter of whether you can or a matter of whether you should. You won't. And it's important to embrace all those parts of yourself regardless, like if it's like your best traits, your worst traits, your clean days, your furry days, because all of that is you, and all of that makes you beautiful. Twin, don't do this. I'm trying to have a nice moment. Fix your face. I'm trying to have a nice moment to fix your face. Because ultimately, doing so is then what helps you to tap into who you are and what that means for you. And also at the same time, to not do so alone. Because we always hear folks talking about, oh, I'm moving in silence, though you're making a whole lot of noise. But I've come to find that while it may be wise to move in silence, it's foolish to move without your team.
Facts. Say that.
Heal yourself, be yourself, move with your team, and flourish. That's those are my final thoughts and takeaway from this movie. I'm probably gonna have to watch it again this weekend, and I'll probably go ahead and cry this time. I'll probably go ahead and cry again this time around for something different.
Right. His makeup was almost done for. Like
I tried to tell you. I gotta
get that waterproof.
As it goes for my socials, you guys can find me on Facebook and Instagram. It's under both of my names, Demarius Newsome. My Facebook, Demarius spelled that way, no additional apostrophes, capital letters, or anything else. Newsome, the 2 words put it together. Social media is on Instagram. That's gonna be Oh So Fortunate with 3 O's and a FOUR. And then beyond that, I just also want to encourage all of you to take your own journeys and to do what is needed to make this world a better place.
I know that's right. Well said.
Preach.
Well said. Dope. You guys are dope. I'm very honored to have been able to moderate this panel tonight. Thank you all so much. Prince John of Leepz, Lord Demarius, Esquire, and of course, the wonderful, beautiful Miss Lewis. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for having us.
I'm just so thank you. And thank you, Moana and Dana. This has been a real treat to just be in the room with such beautiful, smart people. And we'll catch you on the flip side.